This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend until death your right to say it. You agree with that? Do you agree with that statement? I disapprove of, or I disagree with, I vehemently disagree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it. Do you agree with that statement? To truly support free speech, you must agree with that statement. To be an American, to believe in our notion of free speech, you better support that statement. You better support defending speech that you disagree with. If you truly believe in free speech, you will defend speech you disagree with. You will defend speech you disapprove of. You will defend speech that makes you uncomfortable. You will defend speech that you find hateful. You will defend speech that you believe is ugly. You will defend speech that is intolerant. You will defend speech. You will defend the right of someone to speak in a bigoted fashion, in a hateful fashion. If you truly believe in free speech, you'll defend the right of someone to express hateful speech. I hope, I know we don't, the polling indicates we don't, but I hope that one day all Americans will believe in this notion again. I saw a new poll out, and it's just one poll. It's a snapshot, but it's pretty consistent with where Americans' notion of free speech is now, and it's troubling. That statement that I put before you, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend until death your right to say it. Only about 55% of Americans agree with that. Only about 31% of Democrats agree with that. Most young Americans under the age of 35 no longer agree with that. According to this latest polling out of the NORC, at the University of Chicago. But it's consistent with other polling I've seen that shows that younger Americans want government to censor speech. Younger Americans are uncomfortable. With hate speech. Younger Americans, a majority of younger Americans want hate speech to be a crime. And in this latest polling, it's troubling because Democrats are less inclined to support the notion of free speech. Democrats are more inclined to demand and want government to censor speech that they deem hateful, that they deem to be a risk to security, that they deem to be cruel. Democrats, wake up. Young Americans, wake up. You know, you ought to understand, you ought to realize that in much of the civilized world, in much of Europe, hate speech is a crime. Hate speech is no longer protected speech. Here in America, hate speech is protected speech. You have a right to speak hate. This is really troubling. Older Americans still generally support the notion of, man, I don't like what you're saying, but I'll defend to death your right to say it. Older Americans, by a smaller majority, still support that. But younger Americans don't. And people on the left now don't support this American notion of free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. I will defend anybody's right to say anything that is not specific and is a specific call to violence against a specific targeted group. That is not speech that's allowed. But outside of that, in America, you have a right to speak hate. You have a right to say racist, bigoted, ugly, intolerant things, hateful things. We don't censor that speech. We don't use government to shut up or stifle that speech. Not here, and thank God we don't here. I call my former political party now authoritarian, the Republican Party, because they're doing things like banning books and rewriting history and embracing authoritarianism and supporting anti-Semitism and on down the line. But let me tell you something to my friends on the left and to Democrats. If you want and you call for the government to censor speech, to stifle speech, if you want to make hate speech illegal, that is authoritarian. And you do that, Democrats, you push that, you advocate that, I will call you and I will call that authoritarian every bit as much as I do people on the right. Come on now, this is what America is. We don't shut down speech. We don't use government to protect us all from speech. We allow speech. And if we have a problem with speech, we protest. We shut down that speech with other speech. But we don't use government in this country. We should never, ever use government in this country to restrict free speech. And I want my Democratic friends and I want my friends on the left to do some soul searching. And I want young Americans to do some real soul searching. Because this is wrong. To want to outlaw hate speech is wrong and un-American. And I think you, young Americans, I think all of us need to toughen up. That's not how we deal with speech that offends us. Not here in America. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend until death your right to say it. If you truly believe in free speech, you will support that statement. I'm Joe Walsh. This is White Flag with Joe Walsh. God bless. Have a great week. Make it a great week. And be brave. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.